don't give him an extension.
I'm sorry, Seamus.
Go ahead.
We got some news.
breaking
We gotta
news.
break it.
I
It
see
won't be
it.
the
I
first
see
time.
it. Go ahead, bro.
I am going to take this opportunity, however, just to bring in Will Weir here from the Celtics. How are we doing, Will?
What's up, fellas?
How
Doing
we
good. Happy to join the middle of some breaking news here.
I know, right? So here we go. We got the Atlanta Hawks trading for DeAndre Hunter to the Cleveland Cavaliers in exchange for Karis LeVert, Georges Niang, 3 second-round picks, and 2 pick swaps, or two of which are swaps. Guys, now this is a move that this directly impacts the Boston Celtics. So this is good. I'm happy.
That's actually a pretty crazy one. That's wow.
Yeah, this is a big one. This is a Cleveland team, guys, that has kind of been praying for some forward help. They really have had lackluster forward play outside of what Mitchell and Garland obviously do at the guard spot, and then Mobley and Allen do down there. So this right here, is this Cleveland inching closer to Boston? Does this move the needle for you guys?
Definitely an improvement for them. I think they definitely are going away from their depth that they were playing with in the last game. You saw players like LeVert and Niang having some progress and also helping out the Cavaliers off the bench. But I think they became a much more powerful starting five, and I think it adds a lot more talent to this Cavaliers roster. And it's kind of a win now statement, because we were saying that Randy was saying in the post game a few games ago that the Cavaliers are almost just as likely, if not as likely, as the Magic to win a championship in the next upcoming future.
You know what's insane about that, Franco, is Randy was the one shouting out during last post game that the Cleveland Cavaliers needed to go out there and make a move. And what do we see here? The Cavaliers actually went out and made a move at 40-10, their record right now. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, we talked about it last post game too, that their versatility isn't always there and within their lineups. I think DeAndre Hunter certainly gives the Cavs a lot of versatility out there on the floor to go play in different styles. And I'm very interested to see whether he will start or come off the bench. It's very possible he starts, because they really have that middle forward spot that you think you have Mitchell, you have Garland, you have Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley, but then that 3 spot, it can really go to DeAndre Hunter. And I know they have their guys in which they start there, Max Strus, Dean Wade even, but I really do think DeAndre Hunter can come in there and make an impact with the Cleveland Cavaliers ultimately at the end of the day. And we will definitely, I think they've added something to their roster that they didn't have against the Boston Celtics the other night, which is just that versatility at the forward spot that I would even say, like, within that game the other night, right? And let's actually get this up here on screen real quick, so we can let people know what we're talking about here, which would be the Cleveland Cavaliers acquiring Mr. DeAndre Hunter, because that's what we're talking about right now. So the Cleveland Cavaliers, they acquired DeAndre Hunter, and ultimately this move gives the Cavaliers more roster versatility, 100%. And they're all in right now because they're 40-10. They're atop the Eastern Conference, and there's no reason why the Cleveland Cavaliers shouldn't go all in at this moment in time, because the Cleveland Cavaliers, after the LeBron era, they were awful, and they've really been building back up to this moment at this point in time. And right now, I believe that this DeAndre Hunter move does give the Cavaliers a better look than they've had with their team this season, and I do believe that he could help them in the playoffs later on in time, because I'm surprised Atlanta even moved on from DeAndre Hunter, quite honestly. But the Cleveland Cavaliers, they certainly get themselves a more versatile forward than, say, Max Strus, say Dean Wade, and everybody off their bench. It really isn't cutting it for the Cleveland Cavaliers in terms of the mismatches that the Celtics were able to gain against the Cavaliers, and that they were able to exploit going ahead into the playoffs. And what's interesting too, Celtics do have one more matchup against the Cleveland Cavaliers, so we'll see the new look Cavs in that matchup later on. I believe in March. That is, it might be this month or March.
Yeah. I think it's late February or March.
Don't be shy here, guys.
Yeah.
Feel free to pop in.
Anybody jump
Yeah,
in?
Don't be
let
shy.
me jump in
Yeah,
here. I haven't
anybody
got my
can
feet
jump
wet
in.
on this quite yet, but I think the versatility piece you just hit on, that's one of the biggest parts of this. Watching the Celtics and Cavs game earlier this week, a little bit too much George Niang. I think there's just a lot of Niang and a lot of these late game lineups the Cavs had going on. Karis LeVert, even though he can score, it's become kind of redundant with the emergence of Ty Jerome. Like, they don't really need him to score as much, or his ball handling, right, has become kind of offset with what Ty Jerome brings. And so, after that Cavs game on our show, we were talking a lot of, is this a Cam Johnson spot? And I think DeAndre Hunter kind of fills the similar void, not quite the shooter as Cam Johnson, but a much better defender. And so I think that actually kind of leans into the Cavs identity. And I think when you talk about that versatility piece, that was one of the bigger questions for the Cavs. Like you mentioned, there's Garland, there's Mitchell, there's Mobley, there's Allen. But at some point in some series, you're going to have one of those two on each side kind of off the court. And then who do you fill that with? And I like Dean Wade. His availability hasn't really been there. We've seen Dean Wade beat the Celtics in a game last year. It's pretty memorable. And then you have, Max Strus. We've seen him through the Heat battles. And so now if you have Hunter, Strus, and Wade that are kind of filling that gap in between, Ty Jerome providing, 15, 16 minutes of additional ball handling. And then you're just kind of, can we play with two bigs or do we need to go with one big? That's a lot better versatility. Now, a big part of this is Hunter's been healthy this year. And I saw someone in the chat put, Peyton Pritchard's probably biggest competition for sixth man of the year is DeAndre Hunter, depending if Amen Thompson ends up still, with enough eligibility there.Ose are probably the top three guys that you look at. So I think Hunter's a pretty significant upgrade for the Cavs, especially giving up two guys that, were fringe rotation or probably shouldn't have really been in a top tier playoff rotation. And you get a guy that, is in competition for sixth man of the year. We'll see where this brings them, up to the Celtics level. But I definitely look at them in the East as no doubt they're the team that I look at that has enough depth and versatility to challenge the C's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I got to dip soon. So I would just add, this is the best the Cavs are ever going to be. So they have to swing for the fences. If it doesn't work again this year, they'll probably look at trading Garland or Allen and just shuffle the deck, build around Mobley and Donovan Mitchell. So yeah, it's a lot of assets, but
I was going to say this is the best deal that they probably could have done this year at the deadline, is to make the move for a good wing. Absolutely. I mean, and they definitely got Hunter in there right on the bat, so it's awesome.
Yeah, to Will's point, the guys they're sending out weren't really playing, or if they were, it was kind of a problem maybe for the Cavs. I mean, if you just watch that Celtics Cavs game in the second half, they're just feeding Jason Tatum to go up against wings who can't defend him or mismatches. So yeah, Hunter might have the most pressure on him in the Eastern Conference playoffs now because he is supposed to be the Jason Tatum stopper, but we'll see. It's a fascinating move by the Cavs. I really appreciate that they're going all out for it, because sometimes teams say good enough, and for them to say hey, we don't have this in the bag, even with the record, let's rock and roll.
And this has been the hole for so long, Cam, right? This has always been, even ever since they made the Mitchell move, it was okay, who's that one wing connector? And they hoped it was a Coro. He's fine. He's not the answer. They've tried to, Max Strus, once again, he's fine. I think Hunter, when available, he's the best of anyone that they've tried to fill in that role. Just going to come down to availability. And if he's there, and then you still have the Strus and Dean Wade, that's a really good platoon. If you're not going to have, one of the top guys, that's a really good wing platoon to supplement between an amazing backcourt and an amazing front court.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what.
Anyways, I gotta dip, everyone, but thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining in, Cam.
Yeah, thank you.
See you all.
So, that's something I want to play off there too, is when you look at, in particular, the Celtics Cavs matchup, because it kind of feels like that's where Cleveland's heading, right? They're looking at Boston. They're saying, okay, how can we take these guys down? Even New York, really, I'd throw in there as well, because the New York and Boston, who are obviously, in my eyes, the two top teams in the Eastern Conference, they are very wing forward heavy teams. They have a bunch of versatile wings that can really do it all. You look in Boston, you got obviously Tatum and Brown, who are going to give, teams living hell out there on the wing. And then even New York, I mean, they've kind of acquired this team that's really like a wing heavy Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. And then kind of Karl Anthony Towns is like this makeshift wing center that right. Exactly. So I look at this move as Cleveland one, it's a new addition, right? This is a team that made 0 acquisitions this offseason, right? They rolled in with the same team. They swap head coaches. They give Kenny Atkinson the keys, and they've been much better. But the one kind of, looming factor with Cleveland for me was this is the same team. This is the same exact team that got beat by Boston in 5 games pretty handedly last year. Obviously, the Donovan Mitchell injury, but now I think this moves the needle a little bit for them, where I'm looking at them and it's okay. They filled in a gap. They kind of matched. They added a wing that can be versatile, that plays defense, I think, at a pretty high level, and can shoot the ball when he gets going, just as good as anybody. And then they added something new, and I think that they added a new piece that it's going to give Boston, and Hunter's going to give Boston or New York, wherever they see in the second round or in the Eastern Conference Finals, assuming they'll be there, that he can give them some trouble. So I like this move for sure. Or I don't like it, but I like it at the same time.
Here's the official Shams tweet as well. So you see DeAndre Hunter for Karis LeVert and Georges Niang. And Georges Niang gets to go be annoying on the Hawks now. And Karis LeVert, I would say Karis LeVert too. I think he's been falling out of favor in Cleveland for quite some time, even during this season. He was a much bigger part of their team 2 years ago and even last year than he has been this year. So I think from even that aspect, I think you're really just looking at the fact the Cavaliers upgraded from LeVert and Niang as a pairing right there, because both of those guys weren't bringing a whole lot to the roster. And I'm really not concerned about the second round picks. Now the 2 swaps, I mean, you look at this trade and you almost go, wow, without the star players, they almost got more for DeAndre Hunter. The Cleveland Cavaliers, the Atlanta Hawks got more for DeAndre Hunter on the back end of this deal than the Dallas Mavericks got for Luka Doncic. But I'm not really sure where those swaps are coming from, whether they're first round or second round swaps.
Yeah.
We'll have to see, but certainly some draft capital in there coming to the Atlanta Hawks, incoming there to Atlanta, and Cleveland really going all in for DeAndre Hunter here on this particular deal. So there we have it, folks.
A move that I want to touch on really quick and just give my thoughts on. Obviously, as a Celtics fan, I probably don't want to admit this, but I really love DeAndre Hunter from a basketball standpoint. As a basketball fan, I really like DeAndre Hunter being sent to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that's tremendous for the Cavaliers. You're dishing out 2 wings, but you're getting probably a wing that's better than both of them combined, with all due respect. Karis LeVert in this past season really hasn't provided much when he's been able to stay healthy for the Cavaliers. And then Niang, man. I was texting I was texting with a Cleveland fan the other night, another Cleveland page, and I was saying to him, I'm like, I think I feel bad for you, because every single time the Cavaliers gained a little bit of momentum in that game the other night, Niang absolutely took them out of it. Absolutely,
way too much Niang. Way too much Niang in these Cavs rotations.
I said, this whole Niang on Tatum thing, it didn't work in Game 6 of the semifinals last year when Tatum went bananas, or they could have been 2 years ago. And it didn't work in Boston earlier this year. I mean, he dismissed the minivan on the Mass Pike. Ended up in the balcony. And I'm not a big Niang guy. And this is also a guy where lost a lot of respect for when he went on a podcast, and he essentially said how he was basing his career off of Ben Simmons' career, and how he hated how the Ben Simmons situation went down because, he really felt like he couldn't play at his best because of Ben Simmons. And to me, as a professional athlete, if you're going to base your game solely off another guy's game, that just doesn't sit right with me. But this is a really tremendous move for the Cleveland Cavaliers. A really, really, really good move for the Cavaliers.
Kind of like you were saying, Justin, this whole DeAndre Hunter trade, it's really interesting, because if you guys, whoever was on Postgame for the Cavs game,
we've already mentioned this too.
I gave you your flowers earlier.
We've already called you out.
I brought up so many times how this team's not winning anything. They're not. And you give up Niang, and Yang's one of those guys that he reminds me, actually, all the time I hear on these broadcasts for the Cavaliers, oh, Niang's finally found a home with the Cavs. He's kind of been a journeyman throughout his career, and he's finally on a contract. He's found a home in Cleveland, and now look what happens. He gets shipped off. So it's just interesting because DeAndre Hunter now, he kind of adds some versatility on both ends of the floor. He can kind of do it all. And I think when you pair a guy like Hunter, who is so versatile on both ends of the floor, up with Garland and Mitchell, I think you can have, with Garland and Mitchell, right? You have a decent core. I was talking about Merrill, Dean Wade, all these mediocre guys, even Levert, mediocre guys, and then you can trade some of these mediocre guys and get, I don't want to say a star in DeAndre Hunter, but an above average player who is going to work to the strengths of both Garland and Mitchell, who are both superstars in this league. I think now, as a Celtics fan, I'm a little bit more worried. I still don't think we're too much. The Cavs are too much of a threat to us, but it's just kind of an interesting trade because that does really add that third. When you think of a contender out of either conference, you need like a big three kind of. We have the big two, and then the rest of our starters, I'd say, are all pretty much all stars. So when you add that third guy in Hunter, I think you really add another element to the game for the Cavaliers.